there was never going to be a future relationship. There was never going to be love. I was way too old to date, way too old to be of interest to anybody.
We always say like, oh, I'm open to change, unless it's my change, unless I have to change and have to do something differently. Change is hard. It's uncomfortable.
Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Kedkodian. And this is Couples Synergy.
Welcome back to another episode of Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean. And this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Check us out online at couplesynergy.com or on Facebook and Instagram at Couple Synergy. And please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couple Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experience helping thousands of couples transform their relationships for over 20 years.
Everyone says you should work on your relationship, but nobody teaches us how. So we've created this podcast to teach people what they can do to create the relationship they've always dreamed of
with the partner they fell in love with. On today's episode, we welcome Bill Miles and Kristen Noel. They are the co-founders of Best Self magazine and creators of the Best Self Intuitive Divorce Coaching Program. Bill is a holistic life coach and Kristen is a certified intuitive life coach. Together, they help parents in the early stages of divorce take control of their divorce and save time, money, and heartache for their family. Welcome to our podcast today, Bill and Kristen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
We just did exactly the same thing, Bill. That's some synergy, right?
There you go, right?
Ding, ding, ding.
Couple synergy, exactly.
We pay people every single time they say couple synergy, right?
That's good.
Actually, I didn't even realize I just said that. That is hilarious. Do you have an affiliate program for that?
Oh, well, we'll talk after the show. So we want to get into, the work that you guys do, because we feel it's really, really important, especially in our society today. Divorce is a pretty common thing at this point. And so before we do that, why don't we get to know you a little bit? How old are you and how long have you guys been together?
Age 61 at this point. And the short story is I went through, after 21 years, a pretty dramatic divorce, which was now 18 years ago. That has had profound impact on me, of course, but also I had 3 children that were young at the time. Now they are adults, and it's had a profound impact on them. So it's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because so many people, so many parents, and consequently children endure a lot of unnecessary suffering in the process. So that's that's sort of the genesis of this program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Kristen?
I'm Kristen Noel, and I can't believe I'm going to reveal this to you, but I'm 57 years old. I was like, wow, that's a hot seat. And it's just been a long and winding road to here. I also endured a really dramatic divorce and life upheaval about 18 years ago. And I am the mother of one child who was only a toddler at the time that this all fell apart. He's now graduating college in 3 weeks. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of resources. We weren't really on social media. We didn't have the same kind of platforms and podcasts and books and go-tos. And so I really learned the hard way. And as they say, you begin to teach what you need most to learn. And luckily for Bill and I, we found our way to each other 17 years ago. And we've been together since, just kind of like going through our own personal healing, really discovering what true love is. And I always say, Bill was someone who saw me, he didn't save me. And I think that's a really important distinction, especially for women, because we're always, when you're in that complete upheaval. I mean, I literally lost everything. I lost my marriage, my house, my money. I mean, it was like I had to move home to live with my parents at age 40 with a toddler. So there was a lot of rebuilding that had to take place. And that was just really the beginning of an incredible life journey, where I've just learned volumes and volumes. It's just made me a curious human being. I kind of say, like, the beginning part of my life, I was sort of sleepwalking. I just really didn't have navigational tools and skills. And so part of this incredible chapter that I've had with Bill, of now being together 17 years, navigating our blended family and, our own personal healing, our own rebuilding. Also, then seeing the impacts that it's had on our 4 collective children. That's really been a lot of the impetus for how we ended up in this long and winding, crazy road to here.
Can you tell us a story of how you guys met?
Well, actually, it's funny because we probably had Bill's background. He's a commercial photographer. He's a lifetime award-winning commercial photographer, advertising photographer. And so I was a fashion model for 15 years. We definitely at that chapter in our lives crossed paths, but didn't know each other, which is very interesting because we know so many of the same people and have been in so many of the same places. Did not know each other in that chapter of our lives. But while I was still living in Manhattan and he was in Boston, he was working with a fashion stylist that he worked with all the time. This is right when my life had fallen apart. She had said to me, "Hey, do you want to be an assistant? Do you want to help me out, make a little extra money on the side? And you can help me on these photo shoots." And I thought that chapter was closed. And I thought, okay, I'll do this, but I'll just like hide in the background and steam clothes and, and the rest is history. I didn't know at the time that Bill was going through a divorce. He didn't know what was going on in my life. Neither of us were looking for love, and like, boom, things happen, and I think that's sort of like divine timing. And probably, I guess it was probably, I don't know, 6 months. How long after we first met, Bill? 6 months, 9 months before we
Something like that.
Yeah. went on our first.
A kind of mutual
date.
friend arranged this date, if you will. That was kind of the first and last date for each of us.
Yeah, it was. It was. Well, that, again, it's, I think it's, I had so much going on in the background of my life that the looking for love, I thought that had passed. I was like, okay, I'm done. That's, I'm terrible at relationships. That ship has passed. And there you go.
How did you know that this was your person?
Well, obviously you kind of grow into that. I don't think we knew initially, but we knew initially that this felt very, very different from anything that we had come through in the past few decades of our life, right? So we knew that. So that was enough to pique curiosity. And what it really boiled down to is that we're both very broken at that point. And part of our conversation, as we'll get into later, and how we serve people is to learn to see our role in the mess that we have in front of us and pull out of victimhood, which is an easy place to hide when you're going through divorce. And both of us were at a point in our life where we were ready to put a lid on the past and start seeing our future differently. So we both started this journey of kind of discovery and a thirst to do it differently, a thirst to learn, a thirst to grow, a thirst to see life and, through a new lens. And so we, fed off of each other's desire to grow that way. That actually is how we ended up starting Best Self magazine, which is now about 7 years old at this point, which is all about holistic health and conscious living. And through that magazine, we ended up creating it because we're so passionate about this realm of personal growth. But in hindsight, we created it because we needed to learn everything that we curate and write about and, interview on in that magazine. So
how long were you guys married previously before?
21 years for me.
21 years. Okay.
Yeah. Long time.
Yeah. That was a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And you, Kristen?
I think it was 8 years, 7, 8 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to add something to that, though. There's that cliche, it kind of bothers me. It's like, you complete me.
We hate that.
We hate that.
I know. I think you get to a certain stage. I really did believe it was really fun. Funny, not funny, but I was only like 39 and thought like everything was over. I thought like, wow, life was just, runaway train. And it kind of was at that point. So I really was not looking for love. I did fall in love. I unexpectedly fell in love with Bill very quickly, very hard. And I knew right away, but also it took me a little bit of time to trust it, to trust myself. And again, it's not about being saved. It's not about another person coming in and like fixing all your problems, because that's seductive. That's definitely seductive. But I think it was really experiencing, for lack of a better way of saying it, just a mature love that we really, it was for the first time I felt like there was someone that I could just sit down next to and we could hold hands. Some days we're going to be up and some days we're going to be down. He wasn't trying to fix me. I wasn't trying to fix him, but we were saying we're here for each other and you can do it. And I know what you're capable of. That's a very different way to look at creating a sustainable relationship and to really creating a sustainable love and to see the best in someone, want to nurture it and want to do nice things for them. Like this is like a funny little thing, but I still laugh at this. I always call Bill my gas fairy, because every single time I go into my car, the gas register is always on full. Like I'd never have to even think about filling up my gas tank. It's just a little something that he does because he's thinking of me. And he's like, oh, let me just, run when I'm out getting groceries or I'm out going to the gym. I'm just going to fill up. I'm going to top off the tank. It's like these little things that we do, not because this is your job. This is your job. You have to do this. You have to do. It's because like, oh, it's a very sweet little thing that I don't have to point out. And I don't have to get a lot of credit for. But like when someone does that kind of thing for you, when someone's just like doing little things to make your life sweeter, nicer, guess what has trickle down? You want to do the same thing. Care
and consideration for your partner.
Exactly.
How much time in a week do you guys spend like face-to-face time, no screens, having fun, doing new things? Not work or logistics?
Well, that's an interesting question because we live together, we work together, we're together a lot, and we still feel like it's not enough time, which is, I know that doesn't work for a lot of couples and that's cool. I get that, but it does for us. Work and our personal life, it's one flow. So it's not that we're always talking about work, and when we're working, we're not always talking about not work, but it's hard to separate the two. We do, maybe we'll take a trip, or maybe we'll take, like we go camping every year up in Maine in the summer. I've been doing it for 16 plus years. And it's a very, it's a wonderful getaway, right? But it doesn't mean we don't talk about work. Sometimes that's where your mind is the most free to dream and come up with new ideas and a new vision for things. So I don't have a good answer for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I also think because the work that we're doing now, we ended up creating this world. We recreated, like we both came from very broken places where we had to recreate everything. And the work that we're doing now is like, we always say it's our baby. This is our creative baby. We didn't have like a physical child together, but this is our creative baby. So we're constantly being really inspired by things. We live in the mountains. So when we need to, we just go take a walk. We walk our dog in the woods. We like go out in the backyard. We lay in the grass, whatever it is. We're really nature oriented. So we'll go, do stuff outside, but I wouldn't say we're workaholics because we don't actually consider what we're doing. It's not like this every day, but it's like, we don't consider it work. We're really excited. Like we get up in the morning, we're like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to write this. We're going to get that. But, we're doing this podcast. So we're at this stage where like we're empty nesters and, really excited about what we've been able to create and what we've built after, many years of kind of attending to others' agendas, others' needs, or putting out fires, so.
We can definitely relate to that, right? We've been empty nesters for 6 years and, we live in the mountains. We live in the mountains, Colorado, and we could just go out on our backyard and just take in nature. And it is a wonderful place to be. And, I think that it is absolutely necessary for couples to spend a lot of time together in order to build that really deep connection, and without all the distraction. And we've seen,
we take at least a week and go in the backcountry and live out there, every year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And especially
nature,
with the work.
Nature is unbelievable. I mean, honestly, I moved out of New York City and I'd been pretty much in cities my whole life. And I was really disconnected. I was really not connected to nature, not understanding the power, the healing power of nature. I was disconnected from my body. I was a model and I was thin and that's just the way things were. And I didn't really have to worry about it, but it was like that thin has nothing to do with health, and I really wasn't a grounded, healthy, centered person. And I feel really blessed that we ended up here in Woodstock. And I think so many things were birthed here, and really understanding mind, body, spirit connection. So it's kind of no surprise we ended up now. We've kind of come full circle because, I always say I'm a professional phoenix rising from the ashes. And I really had to go through that. I think I really had to go through that and heal and begin to understand this so that I could do the work that I'm doing now, because I really want people to understand that they have the power to choose. They have the power to choose how they experience life. We don't get to choose everything that happens to us, right? I mean, there are extenuating circumstances and we get hit with things, but we do get to choose how we experience it. Mm-hmm. And, I've had people challenge me on that and say, well, that's easy to say, but when you're in the middle of blah, 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 and a divorce and, it's so highly charged and, I can't do blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you can. You can choose in that moment to decide how I want to experience this. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go through pain. You're going to get to the other side of your divorce, or you're going to get to the other side of your health crisis, or you're going to get to the other side of whatever situation you're in. But the question is, what condition you're going to be in when you get there? Mm-hmm. And what price are you going to pay for that? Because, going back to like, thank God, I know when I need to go for a walk. Like, I know when I'm like coming undone, getting really frustrated, sitting at my desk, I'm like, okay, I'm taking the dog and we're going for a walk. We're going to climb a mountain. So I feel really grateful to have, earned these tools the hard way. But I really do. I get really excited by showing people that there's so many more choices available to them than they realize. Like life doesn't have to happen to you,
Are those some of the things that the two of you learned going through your own divorces at the time?
It certainly is something we've learned since going through our divorce. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't what we weren't very, some of that was inelegant, while we were going through the process, but I mean, hindsight, baby, hindsight.
How is it different dating in your 40s versus in your 20s?
I didn't think it was possible. I mean, this is, again, part of the irony of divorce. Half of the marriages end in divorce, yet when you are going through it, you feel like you're the only one that's ever gone through divorce. Mm-hmm. You're in this cave. And for me, anyway, that cave, part of that cave, that dark dark cave was that there was never going to be a future relationship. There was never going to be love. I was way too old to date, way too old to be of interest to anybody.
Old man at 40, right?
Well, that's how it felt.
I know.
That's the whole thing. That's how it felt. Truly, I've had more fun in the last 20 years, the last 10 years, the last 5 years than I have, in my life. It's fantastic. But
yeah, we always laugh because, well, obviously we think of ourselves as much younger, but we are healthier. We are more conscious. We are happier. I mean, I used to, when I was younger, I was like, I'd get hysterical about everything. Everything was a big deal. Everything was a drama. And I just didn't really understand that I didn't have to experience life like that.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. It's almost like, we had children, young children at that point, and we've seen them kind of become teenagers and all their drama and all that. It's like, oh my God, we don't have to do that anymore. Thank goodness.
Are you guys the ones that chose to end your marriages, or did you get left?
I ended my marriage, but you would have ended my marriage too. There were a lot of extenuating circumstances.
There are, It really depends on what you consider, causing an end to a marriage. We both had some pretty dramatic events that slapped us in the face. That was like, whoa. But I would have ended my marriage eventually. It's just that the events that happened precipitated it more quickly, which in hindsight is a good thing because I was really dragging my feet, getting out of a relationship I shouldn't have been in the first place, and wasn't serving me certainly anymore. So that is a good question. And
the reason I ask it is because what we found is the person who I think goes through the most pain of the divorce transforms the greatest and finds themselves in happiness. And the other person thinks, well, it was them. And if I get someone else, I'm the one who's fine. And they don't transform at all. That's kind of what we've noticed. I don't know if you guys
Jane, that's very
really good point.
Very good observation. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. And whether it's divorce or not, it's when the universe kicks you in the ass. And like Kristen said, we all get kicked in the ass one way or the other, different times. But what do you do with it? Mm-hmm. You can choose to just go, that sucked, and pick yourself up and just go on and get kicked in the ass again. And the universe will keep, clobbering you over the head until you kind of learn that lesson, and then it'll find another one to pick on you about. But if you don't, if you can choose to say, whoa, what just happened? What was my role in it? Mm-hmm. How can I see things differently so I don't make that mistake again? How can I learn from this? How did that serve me?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really
beautiful life.
Really important point that you just brought up there. And so, what can I learn from this? And too often people get stuck in the why me? Why is this happening 100%. In my life versus, okay, it's happening and I don't have any control over it. It's a choice that's made that was not mine. But then what are you going to learn from it? Mm-hmm. Right? And how are you going to make that happen?
And now let's take a little break to tell you a little bit more about our home study course called Relationship 101.
One of our passions is really to bring this work to everybody. And a lot of times what we hear is one person in the relationship is wanting to work on it, the other one is not. And so this is a great way for you guys to get a taste of what it is like to work on your relationship in a fun 8-date night video series to learn what you need to learn.
Yeah, Relationship 101 consists of 8 video modules, typically about 30 to 40 minutes long, with some discussion questions and exercises for couples to do together at the end. This is kind of a culmination of our work over 20 years and synthesizing all of the skills and tools necessary to create an amazing relationship. This online course consists of 8 modules, which is 5+ hours of course content. It also includes bonus resources, all designed to learn and grow together as a couple.
It's fun, it's insightful, and gives you a great excuse to spend some extra quality time with your partner.
All of this course content is valued at over $850. Currently now, it is priced at $387. And if you just go to go.couplesynergymethod.com/relationship101, it'll take you directly to the link. That's go.couplesynergymethod.com/relationship101.
And if you're a single person, you can still benefit from it.
Change is difficult. We always say like, oh, I'm open to change, unless it's my change, unless I have to change and have to do something differently. Change is hard. It's uncomfortable. It's the unknown, right? I always say that, we're the buzzwords now, we're all talking about, conscious uncoupling, but we're not looking at the unconscious coupling that took place. And I think that that's a really important thing to look at. I wish people didn't get married so young. That doesn't mean these marriages can't work, but it's really about knowing yourself, really, because you can't really blame anything on anybody else, right? It's like, but we're not taught a lot. We grew up in a different generation. People didn't really give us operating instructions. As you said, we weren't really taught how to be in conscious relationships. And there's a lot of self-discovery and a lot of self-reflection that has to take place, and a lot of completing yourself before you're, entering into a marriage. I would like to have believed, I don't think anybody walks down the aisle thinking they're going to get divorced, or that's a way out. I mean, who wants to get divorced? Nobody wants to get divorced. But lots of people end up there. But it is an opportunity. It's really an opportunity to figure out, like, how did I get there? How did I land there? What did I, as Bill said, what role did I play? What warning signs did I ignore? What did I pretend didn't bother me that I didn't see? There's so much that goes with that. It's not just about finger pointing. There's always like the catalyst, right? The straw that breaks the camel's back, but there's 10 million other little things that happen in between, right? It's very rarely one thing that's just like, okay, marriage is over.
Yeah. We call it a brutal transformation.
Yeah.
Brutal transformation. Yeah.
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 And we all know what fertilizer is made of.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, in all the work that we do, we always say that, every marriage ends. We just don't know how or when. Even if a couple's together 50 years, at some point, someone's leaving. Right. Mm-hmm. And so by death, I should clarify, right?
Yeah. So I got that. Yeah.
And so if the goal isn't to stay together forever, then what's the goal of a marriage? What's the goal of a committed partnership? And that is, to learn as much as you can about yourself and about this deep connection, the deepest connection you can have with another human being.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about, people, you wish they didn't get married so young. And it's really amazing to be at this stage of life that we're all at, and our brains continue to develop. And there are ways that you think post 45 that you can't possibly think like that in your 30s. You just can't. Yeah. And it's really amazing to, you said I was asleep, and I think that's kind of how it is. And unfortunately, I think the up and coming generations are even more asleep. They're even more controlled, less creative, less nature, more screens. So it's going to be interesting in the next 10 years to see how that plays out, because a lot of them aren't even getting married.
I don't think our children, I don't think any of our children are that excited about getting married. No. Not that they have anything against the institution of marriage. My son is actually in a relationship. He's only in college. He's been in a relationship for 3 years, a very committed relationship. But he doesn't know who he is right now. He hasn't even graduated college yet. He hasn't even come out into the world, and they've got like a whole bunch of chapters ahead of them. Right. Mm-hmm. And, it's really, really about becoming a solid person, a solid you first, like know who you are, know know how not to deny yourself of who you truly are, because that's another thing. It's not that, of course, a marriage is, any relationship is about a certain level of compromise and fitting together and working together, right? But it's not about hiding parts of yourself or squishing yourself into places you don't fit or pretending to be something that you're not. And I think that's, where we just get so caught up. And then you do that, and then it's like that snowball effect. You just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And then it's like, boom, something has to give. It's just like the combustion.
I'll also say, like Dr. Ray, you just mentioned, marriages are going to end, some sooner, some later. But the fact that a marriage ends doesn't mean it's a failure. It doesn't mean it wasn't meant to be, right? Some relationships are there, all relationships are actually there for a purpose, right? To teach you something. Friendships with your family, your love partner, whatever it is. And if it lasts a year, 5 years, 21 years in my case, doesn't mean it was supposed to last forever. It doesn't mean that it was a failure, because I learned things in that period that I couldn't have learned any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, I think we stay in relationships as long as we're learning. And when we stop learning, then it unravels,
Mm-hmm.
especially if one person grows. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jean.
Yeah.
I'd expand that and even say, I think you stay in life as long as you're continuing to learn.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you stop learning or stop having a willingness to grow, it's when kind of life stops. It doesn't mean you die necessarily, but it plateaus. Just you hit a wall.
You mentioned children. The leading family structure in the United States is the blended family. And so I was wondering if you guys can talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you and, creating a blended family and how you guys navigated that.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I didn't know that was a leading
60% of kids don't live with their both biological parents.
Wow.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm sure we'll both weigh in on that for sure. It's a challenge. We were blessed because our children all loved each other. My three children really took to her son, and her son, a lonely child, really took to having brothers and sisters. And that carried us through, because if they didn't really connect and want to be with each other, mm-hmm. I'm not sure it would have pulled, that pulled us through some tough times with us.
Yeah, I was going to say that was actually a game changer, because pretty much everything was working against Bill and I. We were in two different cities. He was outside of Boston. I was in New York City. He was in a contentious divorce. I had a whole dramatic situation. His children were with their mother. It was complicated. They were still living with their mother in her house. So we were never actually all full-time under the same roof. But if you have kids not getting along, it probably would have been like the deal breaker. I think that was like the slice of grace, that those kids just fell in love with each other. And it was a lot easier. I have a very good relationship with the kids now, but they were really tough on me. But that was because of their mother's directive. And what they were being told. And so we worked really, 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 really hard, just taking the high road, putting their interests, their best interests, making that a priority and taking that to heart, and just kind of kept, really just dealing with like, what are they dealing with? I'm the parent here. What are they dealing with here? And how can we help them navigate this? But if the kids hadn't gotten along, I think it would have been it would have been the straw. It would have definitely been the straw.
Now that your kids are older, are they able to see what happened? That they were kind of, what's the term they call it? Parental alienation kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll let you answer that, Bill.
Yeah, it's more an issue for me because I was not the custodial parent. The answer is 3 children, 3 very different experiences, 3 very different patterns for how they're dealing with it now. My oldest son, I mean, he's, 28, still a lot of living ahead, but he is kind of stuck in this victimhood of life sucked because my parents got divorced and I blame you both for it. And that's that. So he's got this kind of anger about it all that is holding him back from moving forward in his life. On the flip side, my next son down, who's 26, hurt a lot through the process, was the most alienated, if you will. I'll call it emotionally abused. And kind of to your point, Gene, because he hurt the most, he was also the most eager to make sense of it. And he's now a yogi and is really on this mission of, he's a seeker. He's really trying to make sense of his life and help other people along the way put it all together. He reads tons of books and philosophy about life and relationships and blah, 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 blah. So he's really grappling with it and trying to, learn from it and move forward. And then I have a daughter who's 23 at this point, and she was very hurt as well. Her MO at this point is to just kind of step back and go, that sucked. I'm just going to have a good time. Doesn't mean she doesn't care. She doesn't have a heart. It's just not, she's not on a path to go make sense of it all right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've seen parents turn their kids against the other parent, and it is very sad. I don't know if you guys can speak to what would you say to the parent who is doing that, and what would you say to the parent who is being, alienated?
I have to honestly say it's one of the biggest pain points. It just kind of gets me in my gut, even when we talk about it. And even when I listen to Bill, I witnessed this from the sidelines all these years. And it's hard to see what the kids are still contending with, because, you cannot tell your kids or anyone else how to feel. And it's so important to not embroil your children in this mess, and that's not, I understand that's also, it's not easy, because they see you, they're in your house. It's a highly charged experience that affects everyone, but they are not a pawn. They are not a pawn to be, it's not a tug of war going back between parents. You're not to use them for revenge. You're not to use them. Period. You really,
as a pacifier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you've got to, and they're not your sounding board. We focus a great deal on this because also a lot of times, people hear the word divorce and it's like the only thing they think about, it's like, the money and the lawyers. And it's like, they forget about the self-care and the kids. And they're like, well, I don't have time for that. And I'll get to that later. Well, we're here to tell you that there is no, later. It's like, we're dealing with children who are 28 years old that are scarred from divorce. And there's no denying that they are scarred from divorce. And they are scarred by what happened in that divorce. We as parents are modeling for our children. We're modeling what is love, what is a relationship, what is caring, what is manipulate. They're taking it all, and no matter what the age is, they're taking it in. So this, I'm really glad you actually brought this up, because this is actually a very big part of our program. And we put a lot of energy onto that. We also try to work with parents in the first 100 days of divorce so that we can set the tone, build a foundation, and keep those kids out of this. Now, that does not mean that you just send them off to the Caribbean and that they're not a part of this, because they do have to be a part of this process, but it's just, they cannot be embroiled in this emotional chaos, because it will impact them. It will damage them, and you will be cleaning that up, or you will be, watching them suffer. I wrote something called divorce vows that I ask people in our program to go through. It's a really kind of a rough process, feels sort of like counterintuitive, Because, let's say most divorces are contentious, right? But what a divorce vow is sitting down and writing what your intentions are for your children. I promise not to disparage you. I promise to allow them to love you. I promise to whatever. And the reason we like to take people through that is because they get very clear up front what matters, what's important. And then they can remind themselves of that promise. Even if they can't get the other parent to do it, and, let's say two parents, even in a contentious divorce, if they could just make this promise, not because you love me or not because I love you, but we love these children and we want to protect these children and we want to show up as our best selves. We want to show up as people that we can say, look, we did a pretty good job getting through this. If mom and dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad, whatever the equation is, if they could make these vows with this in the middle, this, most precious cargo here, we're doing this because of this. This will change the trajectory of your children's experience and your experience, because you go back to those vows and you will remind yourself, I promise to do this. I promise to do this. I promise to,
and it's not always going to be perfect. It's a sounding board.
It's never going to be perfect.
That's your mind. And this is the thing, what Kristen mentioned, the first 100 days. And, that's a loose starting point of when you start the clock on that. But basically, once you've drawn a line in the sand and you know that separation is imminent, or maybe you've been served papers or whatever, it's going that way. These first 3 months are when it's such an emotionally charged time and you're asked to make such important decisions with long-term consequences. This is where you set your initial separation agreements, where you start to get the custody train going. It's where you start to divvy up finances and all this sort of thing. And this is where you have to be grounded and where you have to be uber responsible with how you are impacting your children. Responsible, aware is really the bigger word, aware of it all.
I really like that, because, the most parents or most couples are not really aware of that impact on their kids because they're just so immersed in their own pain.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that vow. That's like a recommitment, because their relationship is going to continue. It just has to transform into a different relationship. And so having that recommitment, it signifies, this change in our relationship. And now the first and foremost is the kids.
Yeah. Well, that's the motivation. But when you think about it, when you sit, this is the thing. Divorce feels like a house on fire, right? And you got to run in and you got to just you're with your fire extinguisher, putting out all the fires. The fact of the matter is that you need to step back. You don't have to make every decision in that split second. The house is not on fire. I mean, the house is kindling, right? It's whatever. But the fact is, you will set the tone. You'll set the tone of not only protecting your children, which is really, they didn't ask for this, right? So it's but you are setting the tone for yourself. You're setting the tone for the house. You're setting the tone for the family. You're setting the tone for your future. It's really, really, that's how important this work is. That's how, and it's not, people often think oh, I don't know anything about this self-care world, this wellness world, this woo-woo world. It literally is simple as just making a different choice, just turning and saying, oh, I'm going to go right instead of going left. I never looked at it that way before. I'm just going to make a different choice. It's not oh my God, I've got to run off to an ashram in India. It's just about making a different choice and saying, you know what? I promise to help my children navigate this to the best of my ability.
What do you do if one of the parents is not willing? Do you still work with the other parent?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We
only work with, with one parent.
Okay.
Right. I mean, it's not that we wouldn't work with a couple if they came to us. It just hasn't really happened yet. Right. But it could, and that would be great.
Right. And oftentimes, oftentimes things are very contentious, but that doesn't mean you get off the hook. It just means your job is a little bit harder, but you need to be committed to your child. You need to be committed to be the responsible parent. And I will say that when you learn these tools and you really kind of step into it and you own it, it has trickle down effect. And suddenly when you stand firm in your convictions that I'm not, okay, I'll give you a good example. 2 to tango. If I don't put my dancing shoes on, there's no dance. Right? There's no dance. So I'm not going out on the dance floor with you. I'm not doing this anymore. We're getting divorced. I'm protecting this kid. You can do what you want to do over here. And I'm sorry that you're doing that. And you're inflicting pain on our child. But I'm not coming out on the dance floor and doing the same thing with you. We're not doing this together. And I promise you, that child is being impacted by that. And this is a choice that you're making. But your good behavior, you're taking the high road, when you stand firm in your convictions, it does have ripple effect. Because you know what? That other parent is coming out to the dance floor and suddenly they're looking around, there's nobody to dance with.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that we've interviewed that are adult children of divorces, and they know which parent, talked badly about the other one and which one didn't. And and that is something they carry with them.
And it can be incredibly toxic, parents that make their children, they're privy to too much. Every time the lawyer calls, they can overhear the hysteria on the phone, or, oh, you can't have a bicycle because daddy bought his secretary dinner, something like, just whatever it is. It's like these little emotional outbursts and hits have such profound lasting impact. It might be a little thing that a parent says in an unconscious moment, a little outburst, but they don't realize the lasting impact that they're making on their children and how long it will take to clean up. And again, nothing is perfect, right? So I have made plenty of mistakes. And then what I would do is go in and clean it up. And that's also a really important lesson, because when I could sit my son down and say, hey, I want to talk to you about something, and I want to apologize to you about how I handled this, because that's not the way I want to show up for you or this relationship or myself. And I apologize that I said X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to work really hard not to keep repeating that behavior, or give your children a voice to say, like, how did that make you feel? Ask your children how that made you feel. Because it's, you might not like what they say.
Right. Actually, the research shows that it's not the divorce that actually causes dysfunction in kids. It's actually how the exes communicate with each other and what the kids see. Right. And the more contention there is, the more problems, because the kids are half of the parents. And so if they hear one parent disparaging the other, they're disparaging half of them as well. And so it leads to, a lot of, mental health issues and truancy and just addiction. Right.
One of the most,
depending on the age. Yeah. We see this all the time, and, it's undermining their safety and their security. And again, I go back to, it's mirroring and modeling, like, what is love? What is a relationship? If this is what they're seeing, what do you think they think a relationship is, or how they should behave in a relationship? Now there's also lessons to be had in separating, breaking up an unhealthy relationship. And you can do that in ways that empower children to understand that, sometimes, we're better because we're not, do you remember, how did you feel when we were always fighting? How did you feel when you would hear us screaming? Or how did you feel, we have a client that we worked with, and she had to navigate the separation, and setting up 2 houses with a 4-year-old and explaining that to a 4-year-old. And it was tough. It was tough. And you have to, bring things down to a bite-sized, I would say a bite-sized palatable version that's age appropriate. And it was a difficult, navigation back and forth, but she's gotten to the point where she just told us that recently, she picked up her son, and he just said, he understood, like, I have 2 houses, and I have 2 mommies, and I have 2, and that can be really a beautiful thing also. And I have a dog here, and I have a cat here, and he was, before he got into the car, he was like, bye house. I'll see you in a couple of days. Like, bye. It's like, you can empower your children, or you can undermine them.
Mm-hmm.
Bill,
Right.
would you do anything different? Do you think there was anything more you could have done looking back to connect with your kids and to help them out at all?
Oh, Lord, of course there were things that I would do differently. One thing going, way back again to the early part of divorce is I made a lot of concessions to try and make peace with my now ex, right? Because I didn't want to see the kids suffer anymore. And that was a mistake because it didn't make any difference in the peace. It was just a giveaway that left me less able to fulfill my obligations to my kids, right? And then I get the compounded anger on top of it. So I would have just stood my ground and stayed true to what my values and my intuition was telling me at that time. And that's one of the big things that we work with our clients on, is developing their intuitive voice, listening to their intuition, which sounds very woo-woo when you're in the heat of divorce, but actually it's really powerful stuff for making grounded decisions and guiding yourself. But I will say, having made mistakes, of course, the decisions I made at the time were made because I thought they were the right thing to do, right? So I don't know how you beat yourself up over that, really. I
think more is helping someone that's going through it learn it.
Yeah. Okay.
From your mistakes. Yeah.
For sure. Somebody, like, if I now could confront myself 20 years ago going through this, I would have a whole lot to say to them.
Mm-hmm.
A whole lot. But the most important thing is to understand that you can actually take control of the divorce process. It does not need to be a runaway train of lawyers and expense and time lost and emotional suffering. It just does not. In my case, we did have this division you're talking about where my ex just didn't play by my rules, didn't see things through, she was trying to undermine everything, which made my job twice as difficult. Mm-hmm. But I did stick to a high road, which the kids didn't always understand, but they felt. Mm-hmm. Now they understand that was really even harder. They've both, they've come out and told me, or at least a couple of them have, that they realized that was actually harder to do than to come out, fighting and swinging. But they didn't necessarily see it at the time. They were like, why do you put up with that shit? Why don't you tell her where to go?
So how could people find you guys?
Well, if people are interested in the work that we do, we have a landing page, website, bestselfintuitivedivorce.com, like be your best self, intuitivedivorce.com, where you can learn about our program. And there's a free webinar, free masterclass, where we really unpack some steps, some shifts that any heart-centered parent can take in the early stages of divorce to really get them going in the right direction. So that's probably the best place to learn about what we're doing.
Awesome. And we'll definitely put that in the show notes for everyone so that they can get a hold of you and learn more about what you guys do.
And bless you guys for doing this work. It's tough work.
Oh, well.
You know what? It's super rewarding work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's tough situations, but it's immensely rewarding because people undergo such transformations. In fact, if anybody who's listening here goes to that page, they're going to see an interview with one of our clients where she talks about the terror that she felt going into divorce and how she was able to cross this bridge to life becoming really easy. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that it's not messy, but it's like being able to navigate it became easy. And her life is flourishing. She's not even really divorced yet. But it's really great to see. So it's really rewarding.
It's also,
thank you guys.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just wanted to say it's also really about empowering people to make meaning out of the mess. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't matter how far you've fallen, where you've been, what life looked like. I mean, you really can make another choice. You can make another choice. You can look at it. You can have some self-reflection, some self-awareness, and thrive. That's it. I mean, really, we all, at the end of the day, we really all want the same thing.
Absolutely.
Peace, ease, health, love, happiness. We want to thrive. We want vibrant lives, but you can't have a vibrant life when you are denying parts of yourself or disconnected. And, unfortunately, marriages that start unconsciously end up in divorce. But it is an opportunity.
Well, Bill and Kristen, we want to thank you so much for joining us on Couple Synergy today. And we want to thank all of you listeners for tuning in. Our passion is in helping couples and people have happy and healthy relationships. And this podcast gives us a fun way of bringing our knowledge and expertise to you, our listeners. For all of you listening, please let us know how you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please email us at contact@couplesynergy.com. For more information about Couple Synergy and our programs such as Relationship 101, our home study course, the Couples Weekend Intensive, and our premier coaching program called Couple to Couple, look us up online at couplesynergy.com.
And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please download it and share it. And thank you for listening.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.